All right. Hi, guys. It's great to see y'all. Lovely to see some new faces and some familiar faces again after what feels like a pretty long break. Hope your holidays are awesome, full of good food and family. And in a minute, I'll hand it over to Sean to talk about the symposium. Let him introduce the folks from Boston Area Gleaners. Real quick, I wanted to paste into the chat. You've probably received some calendar invites for these already, but wanted to paste into the chat the upcoming task group meeting information. I hope this pastes okay. There we go. The Bridge the Divide task group is going to be happening this afternoon at 2. The second meeting for Network Vision and Structure will be Thursday the 18th, and the third meeting for Organizational Sustainability will be Tuesday the 30th. If you can't make those meetings, no worries. We will be sharing a recap and the recording in the monthly newsletter as well as on our website. And meanwhile, I will go ahead and hand it over to Sean to introduce our guests for today.
Welcome, guys. Before I introduce today's topic, I just wanted to remind everyone, if you haven't heard, the International Gleaning Symposium is going to be held in Seattle this year. And there is some extra support for Seattle-based or Washington-based organizations to attend. This is part of the work that we've been doing with this network formation, was bringing the symposium back to Seattle, a chance we thought to really kick this network off and really help give a chance to connect all of you. So the dates are May 1st, May 3rd. On the morning of May 1st, we're actually going to hold a regional gathering of folks from Washington State who are part of this network. We're going to host that from 10 to 1 on May 1st. And then we'll be following that by a field trip and a welcome dinner. And then 2 days of workshops on the 2nd and the 3rd. And really hope that many of you will come, if not all of you. And we hope that you'll submit proposals for presentations. So that the deadline for that is the 26th. Kathy, shake your head if that's right. Great, awesome. So it's the coming up here quick on January 26th. We would love to hear from Washington State organizations. If you don't have enough for a full proposal, we're getting a lot of outreach from some of you in the state who are like, you know what, I could talk for 15, 20, 30 minutes, but I can't do a full hour. Let us know. Maybe we'll put together a panel of some Washington State organizations or loop you in on some other topics that we're doing some panels on. So please, 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 submit proposals if you have anything you want to share. We want to really highlight the folks in Washington. And then secondly, we have some travel support for folks from Washington to come into the symposium. So we have a mileage reimbursement for all of you driving in that we can give you. We have a hotel reimbursement of I think it's $125 a night. That you can get, and then we have meal reimbursements for the meals that we're not providing.
So I can help Sean out here.
Thanks,
so in terms, yeah, no worries, been there. So the symposium is coming up, and we've got the Washington State Gleaning Network. We're planning to meet in the morning. And so right now, what Sean was talking about is we're accepting proposals to present. They're due the 26th. If you don't feel you can fill the time, we still want to hear from you. So there's a form linked to our website. Our newsletter is coming out today, or just email Sean or I with your ideas and we can get back to you and put you on a panel. And as Sean was saying, there are reimbursement funds available to help you get to the symposium and stay overnight. Anything else, Sean?
No, so yeah, just reach out to myself or Sarah if you need any of that sort of support. So yeah, I'm really excited to hear from the folks from Boston Area Gleaners. I, have been following their work for like, hey, bud, hold on. I've been following their work for probably a decade now, and I love some of the ideas they come up with, both to creatively find ways to reimburse farmers and creatively distribute produce. I think there's some learnings here that Washington State could use as we begin to think about us as a larger network. And there may be some opportunities for us to model in Washington State to model some of the work that they're doing distributing food. So I'm going to turn the time over to them so you don't have to listen to my kids anymore. And I'll be here in the background, and I'm excited to hear what's new for them, and excited for you all to think about how you might be able to incorporate this into your network building.
Thanks, Sean. Hey folks, I'm Deb Hicks. I am the Gleaning Manager at Boston Area Gleaners.
And I'm Dylan Frazier, the Director of Operations and Strategy.
We're gonna see about sharing our screen here.
But while she's doing that, I was just going to kind of like give you a little bit of context to the work that we do. So we started around 2004, and then became incorporated in 2007 as an official nonprofit. And like many of the other gleaning organizations on this call and around the country, it was started as a passion project, inspired by Agnes Verde's The Gleaners and I. The founder of the organization was very passionate about local ag and food access in Eastern Mass, and kind of just got it going with his friends. And back then it was very small, like extremely small. We're talking like, you know, just a couple folks, couple thousand pounds a season. And it was very grassroots, like not even no staff, no budget, just passionate folks trying to do what they could. And the reason I bring that up is because everyone on this call or around the country starts at a different point in the process, and everyone's in a different scale with their gleaning. And over the last 20 years, since its inception in 2004, we've become like quite big in the Northeast in this space. So we're the biggest gleaning organization in New England and have a reach kind of across 5 different states, although our focus is primarily in Massachusetts. And what we're going to do today is Deb is going to do a rundown of our gleaning program, with a heavy focus on field gleaning, which is going out into the fields and picking with volunteers. And then we'll talk about how we do that, some of the things we've learned over time, tricks and whatnot. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of our other programming and how the organization's kind of evolving beyond that model. So.
Okay, how's this? Great, thank you, Sarah. Okay, yeah, okay, so I'll start over. As Dylan was saying, / alluded to, gleaning is just one of the many programs that we have going on here at Boston Area Gleaners. But that being said, so it's kind of like it's one of the puzzle pieces to all of the moving happening. So a little bit about the process, our gleaning process. You can kind of start to think of the larger distribution process and all of the different trucks that we have moving across the state and beyond. So first up here is just a slide of, you can see us in the middle there. That's basically our location, Boston Area Gleaners. Within about the 15-mile radius, we have a couple dozen different farms that we work with. But like this fiscal year, we worked with, or this calendar year rather, we worked with about 60 different farms gleaning. But our network of farms expands beyond that. So we're staying pretty close to home with our gleaning. So not, I mean, we do travel pretty far, and we'll do that like on a weekly, even daily basis. But we're fortunate that we are in a part of the country where the average size farm, here we'll enter, the average size farm, as you can see from this map here of Massachusetts, is like, I think the median size farm was like 21 acres. This data is a couple years old, but it's the most recent data that they have. So we have smaller farms out here in Mass compared to the West Coast. So that's a difference that we have going in it. I mean, I think it works in our favor as far as gleaning is concerned in those relationships. So yeah, that's just a little picture of the state. You can see where agriculture is centered. We're right about here, if you can see my mouse, right about here. So the majority of gleaning that we do is like in kind of like the greater Boston area and a little west of Boston. We do go to the North Coast here and a little bit the South Coast and a little bit out west. Those partners you see further west, we don't really go out there for gleaning trips, but we do partner with them and we do receive donated product from them. So they're on there as well. This is just, again, just to kind of orient you folks that are out west, not knowing how familiar you are with the East Coast. This is kind of what our growing season looks like. So it's focused, concentrated in about 4 different months. And that's where the majority of our gleaning is happening. So, and of course, distribution, and of course, it's the growing season for everyone else. So we have a lot of moving parts, moving vehicles at these times of years, but it also expands on the shoulders and beyond because of the other programs that Dylan is going to talk about. So yeah, I was just gonna mention it might not be super relevant to this discussion, but this is kind of this shows you kind of the season when we're hiring on seasonal staff, including our apprenticeships. We have an apprenticeship program that leads to a lot of folks like we hire on some folks. We're like training farmers essentially for a lot of those other farms you saw on the previous slide that we worked with. They're hiring seasonal workers as well. And then through our apprenticeship program, they also visit a lot of like kind of farming and food access world adjacent organizations. So they get to dip their toes in that and see if they're interested. Oops. Okay. Next up, just wanted to, in talking about things like distribution and moving food product, it's important to think about efficiencies. So that's kind of what me diving into the gleaning aspect of things is talking about, because you know, as soon as that head of lettuce is cut, you know, you're counting the minutes before it's gonna go bad, and you want to get it to its destination. And there might be multiple steps in between. So from the get-go, so we use a program, I'm just going to jump into this. We use a program called GleanWeb. I know that like the builder of this, is it Dick Gates? Like he's done presentations with Aggo before, so you can find more info on Aggo's website or look it up, or I'd be happy to show folks more about it. But we use this on the back end to organize gleans. I'm reaching out to farmers on a weekly basis, looking at the weather on a daily basis, and I'm sure you guys are as doing similarly. And it's just kind of like, again, like a puzzle on this end of things, kind of like small scale of what distribution and putting together trucking routes looks like, as far as like what product is where, what's the weather going to be like, how much of it is there, how long is it going to hold, like what time of, all those little questions that you need to be thinking about when you're organizing for gleans, like how many people we might need, can we get back there, is it close to another farm where we can do a glean later that afternoon, etc. So this is what the back end looks like as far as like, these are some upcoming shifts we've already added. We put events in here too, because our volunteers, then we don't like lose time communicating with volunteers as individuals unless they have a specific question and reach out to us. So that frees us up for other work. And also you can see past shifts, and we organize a lot of data on the back end in here. Just a couple other, oh yeah, Sean?
Hey, Deb, can I ask a question? Are you
have a question or a
GleanWeb?
comment?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
If you
No?
did, I can't, we can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay, I'll keep going. So here's like what it looks like when we're building a glean, creating a new glean or another type of event. I just kind of pulled up this type of event to give you guys a sense of like what other. So here's the data, or rather, this is not what volunteer. Processes so that you know, our whoops, sorry. Oh, do you use GleanWeb to manage distribution as well? No, we actually use Salesforce to manage distribution. Dylan might go into that more because we also use Salesforce. We use Salesforce for all of our inventory. This GleanWeb we really only use for like organizing volunteers and just kind of like as an outward platform to show what's happening here and what folks can get involved in.
That's great. That's what I
And then we
assumed.
also use Slack a lot. So we're communicating information as soon as we get it, as far as like quantities of what we're gleaning, etc. Sorry. So back to where we were. So here's what it looks like for volunteers. Then we get out in the field. And again, we kind of have streamlined processes, like we still need to write up maybe an SOP, but volunteers know kind of how we work. We're always like, we're thinking ahead about what kind of what we're harvesting and what tools we need to harvest it, what equipment do we need to ask a farmer to maybe like undercut some carrots for us, or if they can, we don't shy away from, you know, asking for a little help. That's what the farming community is all about. And then like thinking about like what kind of harvesting containers we want to use, what are going to be most efficient, what are going to also be like most ergonomic for our volunteers and us. And we always do like a safety talk, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like 1, 2, 3. Yeah, just the comments again, like how I was saying, we want to be thinking about like the end destination and all the steps in between before we are in the field. So in this picture, for example, we had this entire field of like seconds left behind of like the squash, which doesn't look like a lot here, but we got over like 40 of these 20 bushel bins out of this field last year. So yeah, rolling out the bins to make things faster so that people don't have to lift. And then on the back end, like things are going to be stored that way because we can't send out all that product at once. We do have storage here at Stonefield, and Dylan can talk more to that. We have cold storage, and we also, I mean, we also have like greenhouses, et cetera, et cetera. So depending on time of year, we'll determine yeah, where we're putting things and what we're doing with it. Yeah, and then so we've already thought through all these steps. We have everything that we need. We've organized everything that we need, and we're good to go. So everything moves slowly. As you can see, we have we try to keep things generally pretty organized because that's gonna like make things go smoothly on you know, at the next step. So yeah, so having the right tools is key. We do have, you know, farming equipment that we use. We'll take tractors and things like bin trailers, like you can see in this image here out to orchards with us, for example. We've invested in things like picking buckets and ladders. Yeah, so I don't want to give too much information. I'm gonna not say everything that's coming to my head. But here's just another example of like, using the right containers for the right thing, because we don't want to create extra work for ourselves, and we want it to be easy for our drivers. And so, we're palletizing things as we go. We're using containers that aren't too heavy, hopefully, or for example, in this picture with this Hakurai turnips in the bottom right. I think I don't remember on that glean. They look beautiful that we could have just packed those into a box, but maybe we thought we'd give them, maybe we wanted to give them a rinse, or maybe we wanted to bunch them or something like that. So making it easy down the line. We also use like 10 and 20 bushel bins as well when we're gleaning. And then, yeah, so that's kind of it with the gleaning side of things, but also another big part of what we do is like post-harvest processing and packing. And you guys see lemons here. We don't grow lemons here in Mass, but this is going to tie in a little more to what Dylan's talking about with our we get like kicked loads, which I'll leave to Dylan. We have some relationships with like produce wholesalers who are right there in Boston, so we're getting product from them as well that we're sorting through that isn't top grade, that they can't sell, and we're picking out the moldy ones, for example, in this case, and repackaging here to make things easy for the farmer, and for us. We try to well, sometimes farmers will like give us their containers, but we try to then we have to repack and turn around and get those back to them. So yeah, to get things out of the field quickly, here you can see we're using 10 bushel bins, also to be able to get the volumes that we're like as much as we can get. It's the best way to fit as much as we can in a truck. We can't really stack orange baskets or something. So this is the fastest, most efficient way. And then down the road, we're doing some more processing, like topping carrots or washing them. We also sometimes have to clean things up too, like squash in this case. I think a farmer donated this squash, or maybe it was stored improperly or something. So a lot of loss there, but the product was then donated, but we were able to clean it up and take what was good. And then here you can see a good example of, again, just trying to set our like have processes for packing, for processing food, so that our volunteers, they feel like they're getting the most out of their volunteer experience and really like contributing, and so that we are also moving that food to people. So yeah, all of this helps with, I mean, it's getting kind of into the nitty-gritty of some of what we do, but if you think about it, like this is just one morning of packing, and like this season, for example, we had like over 250 of these bins like this of apples, more than that. So just to give you a sense of that, all helps with like inventory, which helps with like it's constant moving parts here. So the faster we can make these processes and move the food out to people, the better. So it remains fresh. So yeah, speaking of moving food out to folks, going back to this image of the farms that we're working with, I was trying to find a similar image for our for the agencies that we work with, but couldn't. But anyways, this is kind of like a percentage distribution graph of where we're distributing the food. So Middlesex County is that county that whoops, sorry, you can't see my finger pointing. The county that we're in, So a lot of it is staying hyper local. Essex County is like the North Shore area here. Suffolk County is Boston area, Boston and kind of some of the surroundings. And then Worcester County is right next to us. So it's, for the most part, like, we're not doing crazy distances, but that being said, we do put a lot of miles on those trucks. So yeah, and then just it might be interesting for folks to see that this number, the 453,000 pounds, is like what we gleaned, both physically gleaning by hand, harvesting, and also donations from our farm partners. And then but the number of pounds that we distributed to our food access partners was over twice that, because we are receiving food in through other like grants that we have and whatnot, which Dylan might talk more about. So yeah, that's a lot that I've just shared with you. Sorry, source of those 10 bushel bins. Where do we get those 10 bushel bins?
Yeah, those are made by Decade Products, is the brand. They're out of Canada. They make a 10 and 20 bushel bin. We buy them from a ag supply wholesaler around us. We have, hundreds of bins that we own that we've bought over the years. So I'll talk a little bit about that later.
So that's about it that I was gonna say with the gleaning side of things. If anyone had any questions about that, if you want to ask them now, you can, or you can wait till later, that we'll have some time for that. Do you have an industrial root washer? Yes, we do have a root washer, and I had a great photo that I did not include in here, because I've because I've used it in other presentations, but we do, and that is something, you know, as that we will use a lot, in particular, like at the beginning of the season or before the season starts, that the farmers that we work with, a lot of them will have stored roots that they'll donate to us, and we'll clean them up and send them on out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pass it over to Dylan.
Yeah, before I do, does anyone have any questions with we'll bring this back.
Yeah. Try that.
So that's like largely our field gleaning, how we get crops out of fields, right? Someone asked about the bushel bins. We went that route a number of years ago, because you can be a lot faster in the field, especially if you know that you're going to be repacking that item into a smaller case, which we do quite a bit of. The reason we went that route is you can also get another look at quality, so you can do a grading. We trace everything in a lot capacity. So then that lot of apples that comes off a orchard will get a quality rating. And one way to increase the quality after the fact is to cull out by size, color, defect, level of ripeness, and that improves the overall lot itself as we're packing out. So as Deb mentioned, we use GleanWeb for volunteer management. At the time when we adopted it, it was a huge upgrade over doing everything by email, which was very tedious. Emailing every single volunteer where to go, when to show up, thanking them after the trip. So GleanWeb has streamlined that, our operations in terms of volunteer management tremendously, to the point where Deb didn't mention this, but we're running, how many gleaning trips do we run a week?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the season, we sometimes run as many as 2 a day, and then if we have two different trucks out, so that could be 4 a day. But then we could also have 2 trips here at Stonefield Farm, because we do plant crops specifically for gleaning and for like group trips and things like that. So we could have as many as like 6 gleans a day, and times a couple days a week.
Yeah, so some of those trips are running simultaneously on a single day. We'll have different groups around the state doing different things. So I'll go back.
I don't know. You'd have to exit maybe. You want me to do
That's okay. We can start here. So what I wanted to talk about, or one of the questions that Sarah put forward to us, was to shed a little light on how we do distribution and what that looks like. So we've built this thing over the years where I was going to show you the
Oh, nice.
this previous slide. This would be our internal supply chain, right? Like we harvest with the volunteers, we put it on a truck, and then we go distribute it. Back in the day, we do all that in one day, right? So we would pick and deliver to the agency at the same day. So it was a very short timeline. But as you can imagine, you're limited in scaling that up, right? Because you're limited in what the pantries or church folks can take, and there's a lot of coordination that goes on. There's only so much that can fit in a truck. So over time, we've developed this kind of unique distribution inventory management model where it's a push-through system into our base inventory, and then from there, it's a pull-through system. So what I mean by that is Deb kind of has a mandate with her team and a motto of go get the highest quality crops and as much of it as you can. That's like what Deb's focus is. And she's making decisions on which farm to go to, when, and which equipment to bring there. And that equipment includes tractors and all the way up to tractor trailers and huge. We have so much equipment now. To get the job done. And we want to be as efficient as possible in getting the highest quality food. And what we've done is kind of detach the distribution part of that a little bit. So that she's free to make decisions on which crops to get, right? Based on quality and what else is in the pipeline, what other farms are offering in a given week. Because as she mentioned, we might be doing 20 gleans in a week. So she's balancing it out between doing the kale, the spinach, the apples, potatoes, carrots, all of that might be coming in one single week. So she's balancing it out. The tricky part for us is we try to turn this stuff as fast as possible through our inventory. And the way we do that is we have a dedicated distribution team, right? And what they do is they aggregate this inventory. It gets received. Every case gets a sticker. If we decide that we want to wash and regrade it, then all that happens. It gets entered into our inventory system, which is all based in Salesforce. And then we offer an availability list to the pantries. And from that availability list, they get to pick what they want. And the way this works is that we're gleaning so much and so often that there's ample variety. So we'll have 30, 40, even 50 different crops on hand, and then multiple lots of each different crop during the season, the peak of the season for us, which is like September through October. So the agencies order what they want, and then we have some agencies of different sizes, right? So some are very specific. They only want certain items, or some agencies want a lot of variety. Some only want pallet volumes because they want to be utilitarian or equitable in their distribution model. Maybe they're bagging it and giving it away. But they order through us from a case type system. We have a dedicated agency manager who coordinates all that. And then we make deliveries to these sources. We work, let me go to the next slide. We work with our regular agencies, and we've developed over the years, we've come to this model of memberships. And the analogy that's probably most relevant would be thinking of it as a season pass to our produce offering, right? So we don't deal with direct end users. We work with people serving or agencies serving the community, other organizations. And those organizations can sign up essentially for these different size levels. And we've made a lot of adjustments to this over the years. But essentially, the smallest level is like an agency that just wants 6 cases a week. And then it goes up from there to agencies that want 108 cases a week. And then we have a few that take even more than that. What this does is it gives us some predictability on outbound stuff, right? So we kind of know how many cases we're needing to bring in on a given week. And, that can be 600 to 1,000 cases of produce that we need to fulfill the commitment on the back end, the distribution side of it, and to meet the needs that we've offered. On any given week, there's variance in terms of what they can select or even go above this number. To do the deliveries on these, and it's over 50 agencies that we deliver to weekly. There's a cost to it. So we're running refrigerated trucks of all different sizes with liftgate service and the whole 9 yards. So we ask that these agencies pay a membership fee, and it's an upfront fee. You can see the cost is listed there, and that $7,500 will get you 108 cases for 24 weeks. So if you do the price per pound at the end of the season, it turns out to be that arithmetic is it's pretty cheap. It's like 8 cents a pound when it's all said and done. So the agencies love it. They think it's a steal to get produce that they select, the variety that they get, and then we do the delivery when they want it, right? So if their pantry, whenever they define the window when they want the delivery, and we make it happen. I'm gonna just pop over to the chat because it looks like you guys pop some questions in there. Do you bring your own tractor to the field? Yes, we do. We own like 12 or so tractors. We own 3 of those bin trailers, and then numerous forklifts and whatnot. So we show up with the full, if the orchard warrants it. We don't do that for every trip, but certain farms have. There's some big orchards that we work with several thousand trees. So we'll coordinate that beforehand, and we'll bring the full arsenal of equipment so that we can be efficient there. Let me just, oops. How do I scroll down? Okay. We are not a Feeding America member. We are entirely independent. And we want to keep it that way. It gives us the freedom to make the decisions that we feel are most important. And to serve one of our major stakeholders is the farmers, right? So we see ourselves as within the farming community. We own a farm. We bought a farm a few years ago, 20 cultivated acres of veg production. We produce about 150,000 pounds off our own farm. So very much seeing ourselves as more in the farming community than necessarily anything else. But we do work closely with the 5 food banks in New England. So we regularly send product to Boston Food Bank, which is the biggest. We work with them a lot. So we're more of a supplier, strategic partner of theirs, but entirely independent. So distribution fees, good question. It's insignificant in terms of like in total of all the agencies that we have. I think the total dollar value is like $60,000 of distribution membership fees. It costs us several $100,000, probably $500,000 to run the program. So all the work, all the staff that we have committed to it, the trucks and everything. So it's a slight offset. We used to do this without charging a service fee, and what we realized is that we got much better engagement with the agencies that chose to sign up for a membership because they have a little bit of skin in the game, and then they really want the produce, and they want the level that they're signing up for. So it helps us gauge like, who wants that 12 case amount or 36 case amount versus who pallet. So they kind of self-identify, and we work to find what fits their needs best. There's another. Next question is, how are you funded? So we're independently funded. We have state level grants. We have a couple federal USDA grants. We've got most of our funding comes from private philanthropy though, and then individual donors. That's so we have to do all of our own fundraising in that regard. There's pros and cons to that. I mean, it's a lot of work in itself, and it's never ending, right? So we've built this kind of monster that needs to be fed, and that kind of is ongoing. Oh yeah, we have a full development team. We have a couple, 4 part-time grant writers. We have a couple other people dedicated to development and cultivating those relationships. And that didn't happen overnight. I mean, that's grown over the years. So as the need becomes more apparent. How do we? So just a little high level specifics. Deb gave you some, and I was just going to kind of run through a little bit more. So the gleaning this past year is a little bit of an anomaly for us. I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting that we had almost 4 feet of rain this summer into the fall, which is 3 times what we normally get in an entire year. So that's just kind of like how climate change has been impacting us this year. So a tremendous amount of flooding, very wet fields, a lot of crop loss. So our field gleaning numbers are way down this year compared to what they have been historically. And that's reflected in these numbers here. So about 250,000 pounds we did field gleaning, and another 200,000 we did picking up from those farms. And the total number of farms that we're engaged with is 52 this current year. Deb mentioned getting stuff from kind of wholesale produce. All we deal with is produce. We don't do any other food group, so just fruits and vegetables. So that turned into another 278,000 pounds that we did. That's from what we call kind of intercepting truckloads or working with brokers for produce that either got rejected from a distribution center and it needs to be gone through, or sometimes a pallet tips over. We did take in several trucks from FarmLink, which is kind of a national broker for surplus produce. So we'll take some of that stuff on a case-by-case basis. One thing we do is contract trucking. We have 2 tractor trailers, 7 refrigerated trailers, and then we have 4 Freightliner straight trucks, and then we've got an additional 4 Zuzu trucks. All of those are refrigerated, and we try to leverage that as an asset for the region so that we're serving the community. So we do a lot of trucking for those pantries that were mentioned earlier. If they need to pick up from the food bank, we do that for them for a small fee. And that keeps our trucks rolling on the road, and it keeps our staff busy. So that's another $1.5 million. And then the farm that we operate here is a 100-year-old vegetable farm, but we took it over and kind of operated as like a wholesale operation, although most of it goes to the Greater Boston Food Bank or our other agencies. We use that the strategy with the farm is to supplement the supply chain with the farms that we're working with. So we grow collards and okra, which are not crops that are normally grown in abundance in the Northeast, but there is high demand. So we grow those crops, quite a bit of them, and crank them out. And then the agencies, the ones that have signed up for memberships, there's 68 of those that we worked with in the past year. And then I was just going to spend a few minutes before we move on to questions and kind of open it up for a discussion, talking about one of our newer programs here at Boston Area Gleaners. And again, this is a program. It's not a freestanding thing. It's definitely like intricately tied to what we do on the gleaning side. Is we started a food hub. It originally started out as like this horrible name, commodity crop surplus program. But essentially it was working with farms to find outlets for their product. And in particular, how do we leverage the assets or the purchasing power of the food banks in the region, which is substantial? There's a taxpayer funded program in Massachusetts where the food bank network, of which there's 4 in the state, they're all Feeding America members, or 3 of them are. The 4th one isn't, but they have access to $36 million annually to purchase from Massachusetts producers. And the question that we kind of came up with is like, why are the farmers growing and donating their crops when they could be accessing markets or being made whole by engaging in commerce that would get it essentially to the same people? So we kind of embarked on that, and the inspiration for that was that, for several years, our top donating farms, 100,000 pounds easy, would come from these farms, but the following year they would either go out of business, they would sell some land for a housing development, they would totally get out of growing whatever crop they were. I've seen it numerous times where the farmers are just ripping out apple trees by the acre, thousands of them at a time, because they couldn't make a crop, right? Or couldn't make a sale, couldn't make a profit, and they took a huge loss, even though Boston Area Gleaners was able to capture a lot of the tonnage. So then we started thinking a little bit deeper and like, geez, gleaning isn't really sustainable if the farms are going out of business. This doesn't work long term, right? Like we're able to capture it in that single season, but housing costs are extremely high in the Northeast, and all of these farmers could make way more money if they developed their land. So after seeing it over and over again, losing some very good farmers and strategic farm partners to the economic pressure, we said we've got to think a little bit deeper about this. And we got a pilot grant from the Clinial Foundation to kind of play around in this space a little bit back in 2016. And then from there, it's grown quite a bit. So what does it look like now? We've rebranded it as the Boston Food Hub. It looks a lot like any typical distribution food hub, where we buy from a lot of the same farms that we work with. And in this past year, we've been able to purchase $1 million worth of produce. All of that money, 100% of it goes back to the farmers. Of that $1 million sales, about 500,000 pounds, and it's just south of $500,000 went to the Greater Boston Food Bank. So they're the biggest customer that we service through that program. So we see it as like mission aligned in the sense that we're able to get the food to people that need it via these vehicles and mechanisms that have been set up. And these are supply chain channels that the farmers didn't have access to if we weren't involved, right? So we're kind of being more of a facilitator in that sense. So 41 partner farms in that program and 75 total customers. And the customers kind of go through a somewhat of a vetting process to make sure that they're mission aligned with what we're trying to do. So it has to be co-ops are a group that we work with. School systems are another big group of customers. And then community type organizations that have a purchasing budget. So this is a way where we feel like the model's evolving, and we've gotten tremendous feedback both from the customers and from the farmers that it's a major benefit to both parties. The fee structure for this is we charge a case fee to the customer, and it's nominal. It's $2 if it's picked up at our farm, and then an additional $3 if they want the final mile delivery. And that's the percentage that we make off it. Doesn't matter what the case is. Again, it's a losing enterprise if you're looking at it from a pure profitability standpoint. It's heavily subsidized. This one mostly through the USDA grants to execute on this work. And we do work in the 5 states kind of surrounding Massachusetts with this program. So Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Rhode Island, and now just a little bit into Connecticut, Maine as well. So I'm gonna jump back to the chat. Do you have commercial retail customers? Yes, we do, but we're not really interested in working with like supermarket chains. It's not our niche and not really the direction we want to go with it. So we're kind of what we say internally is they have to be mission aligned. They have to be trying to do good work in the community, trying to develop community-based food systems, or working on the hunger relief side of things. So we have been approached by like Sodexo's and Aramarks to service some of their accounts. We've explored it a little bit, and it's really not worth it for us. So that's not why we're doing the work, really, is to benefit these giant corporations. But if there's an independent hospital that feels that they have a strong commitment to local ag, then we're kind of interested in that conversation, or a university system that has a genuine, an authentic kind of interest in developing the local food system. Next question is, does the grant that funds the hub feel sustainable? Are you worried that funding could go with varying? Sure, as always. Federal spending and even state spending, with the COVID kind of crazy money that was being floated around, we were able to capture a bunch of it. And that's how we built up the infrastructure that we have. But now I guess the challenge for us and for other nonprofits in our space is, how do we sustain that over time? And that's why we have an earned revenue model. It's a piece of the pie. It's not the entire thing. It's never going to be enough to kind of float the whole organization operationally. Our operating budget annually is about $3 million. And our earned revenue into that is about $250,000. So we'd like to get it more than that, but that takes time. So I'm gonna stop talking and end the screen share. Do that then. So I don't know if you guys have questions, or if you want to. I know it's coming up on the hour mark. I don't know how much time you guys want, but happy to keep it going if you want. We've got time on our end if you wanted to ask questions or whatever. Yeah, go ahead.
So regarding the push-pull
you're
system
muted.
that you have, remember you talked about you had a push system from the field. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay. You had this push system from the field into your warehouse, and a pulse, and you said on the other side was a pull system.
Yeah,
And you're in control of both those systems though, right?
that's right. You have to be. Yeah.
My frustration is I'm from the field, I'm pushing into the food banks. I can't make them pull. I can't make them move it on. And so sometimes I'll call them with, hey, I got some stuff. And I mean, I even got volunteers to pick it for you. And I even, there's a lot of I evens and they're like, oh, well, and they're just kind of vague with me and stuff. I'm like, you snooze, you lose. But anyway, it's been a little bit of a frustration. Sometimes we get really good volumes of things as windfalls from other farmers in the area. And I don't know how, unless you own the whole setup like you guys do, I can't make them move any faster.
That's a great point. And that's at the beginning, that's why we don't want to be beholden to like the Feeding America kind of rubric of decision making. I think what part of our success has been being nimble and agile and being able to connect the dots on our own time and within our own means. One thing that's unique, I didn't mention this, but it's actually quite important. That area that Deb showed with the farms in Eastern Massachusetts, there's about 4 million people living in that area. Okay. So we have small farms. We have Massachusetts leads the nation in direct to consumer sales, right? So we have a lot of pick your own operations, truck farms, that type of thing. So smaller farms working directly with people that buy direct from them. The other thing that's unique in our circumstance is that we have one of the higher food insecurity rates in the nation, 18% statewide. Okay, food insecure households. The big driver of that is housing costs are so expensive in Massachusetts. We have a huge tech industry and they distort kind of the economy for housing around here. So it's driving up everybody's rent. But families are struggling to secure food. So what we sit in the middle of that and you're like, geez, we know all these farmers that have a lot. It might be not a lot of one thing. We'll go after a couple 100 pounds, 1,000 pounds here, 1,000 pounds there. But at the end of the week, if you do 20 gleans, that's 20,000 pounds that you went and picked up in a given week, right? And then on the distribution side, we can't meet the demand because we self-distribute. We have a waiting list of people to get into that membership program, right? So the limiting factor for us in Eastern Mass in our region is our own throughput capacity. We have farms offering us stuff that we can't get to. There's not enough time in the day. And then we have these agencies that want more. And it's like our trucks can only handle so much, right? So that's like, the problem isn't going away. So we're like in the thick of it. I think that helps with the fundraising side of things because the state realizes the work that we're doing and has developed some programs that have been really good for us to work with in the last couple of years. So we're excited about that. And then we're nimble, right? So we can make a day of decision on, there's a great opportunity because a farmer's offering some beautiful sweet corn or tomatoes. We can shift our own schedule around and not be beholden to other factors. Yeah.
Jim, I will add to that, just from experience working for another organization, Hunger Relief, that does more like food rescue, which I don't know if there's anyone on this call who does more like food rescue. But in working, I feel like that happens with our food bank too, is that based on, shortage in hiring and other more like administrative like blockades that they might have at different times, like it severely impacts their ability to take food in and even to distribute it, even though there is the need there. Like I've mostly from my experience working for this other organization and working directly with a lot of like direct distributors like pantries and kitchens and whatnot, programs that make meals. Like there's always that need for the food, and we're in a lucky position to work like Dylan was saying, like you saw that, like this year we worked with like 68 or so, like different agencies directly. And I don't know if the food bank was even included in that number or.
No, they're not an agency. And then, so then there's a handful of other non-members that are not as well organized to become like a member. So they're not like an official nonprofit, but it might be like a community type group led by like a community organizer in a city, right? In a very low income, think of a housing project, you know. We'll work with some of those places too, if there's a demand or need. So they're kind of like unofficial members.
And I don't know if these are some of whom you're talking about, but yeah, some of the organizations that we work with, they do similar work where they're distributing the food to different organizations. So all of the network of organizations is super helpful. Like, we're not relying on a place like the food bank to do our distributions for us. I think that we'd probably run into the same struggle that you're having.
So
Sometimes I get to food banks, I say, well, just tell people you're having a sale.
yeah. One thing that we can do is we do work with the Feeding America food banks. So if like Boston doesn't want it, we'll move stuff to Rhode Island and New Hampshire, Maine. And sometimes there's different interest levels depending on what's going on with each individual actor. One thing that they want is like highly standardized products. So it's got to be all the same. It's got to be the same quality. It's got to be palletized, shrink wrap. So building the systems for that. I mentioned earlier, we only do produce, fruit and veg. We don't do any dairy, any meat, no bread, just fruit and veg. That's our shtick. And only whole produce. We don't do any processed. So we feel like that is like mission creep a little bit, getting into those different product types. It would really bog us down.
We have a great compost facility that is
Yeah.
helpful for, what would otherwise be kind of waste of stuff that could be processed, but it goes back to our farm, which is great.
So you have the pile at your farm?
It's a fairly sophisticated compost operation that we've built here on the farm, and part of the reason we wanted to move to a farm. So it's a windrow system.
Mm-hmm.
We have landscapers bringing in leaves and yard waste. We make a couple thousand yards of finished compost. And the reason we did that is we kind of invested in the compost project, is that it allows us to take more risk when taking in these truckloads. We're on the East Coast, so we're the end of the tailpipe in the supply chain, right? So these trucks are coming from Washington
With apples.
with apples, right, to our supermarket distribution centers, but they might get rejected. And if they get rejected, the trucker has nowhere to bring it. They gotta unload the truck. So that's kind of like a little bit of the space we play in. A lot, produce out of Mexico. Last week we did a load of melons. So that's an opportunity for us. It's swinging for the fences though. There's risk with it. Sometimes the call rate's pretty high and it's a ton of work to go through a load like that. Sometimes it's amazing stuff though. So.
Well, and after it's done, it's black gold for your farm.
That's right. Yeah.
I know this is a little sidebar, but the whole composting thing out in Washington is very professionalized. We have large companies that receive all of the urban waste stream of compostables, and they've pretty much locked it in. I can't even get somebody to bring me leaves or horse manure at my farm, because they'll all receive leaves and horse manure for free, because they need those browns and those things to offset all of the urban food waste garbage and stuff that comes in. They need something to tame it down a little bit in their mixture. So they let them dump for free at their big composting sites.
Interesting. Yeah, the whole composting world is interesting. We don't sell the compost, so we just use 100% of it gets used back on our own fields to kind of close the loop. But there is in Massachusetts, it's a fast growing industry with like curbside pickup for composting, and but there's a food waste ban in Massachusetts.
Same here.
Yeah, so there's a whole industry that's popping up around it. Yeah.
I just think they'd be hard to get some horse shit.
Well, thank you guys so much. Can you guys hear me? Is my mic working now? Oh, good. Well, we really appreciate it. It's fascinating work you guys are doing out there. Would it be all right if we shared your contact information with the rest of this group? If they have any additional questions, they might follow up via email or something like that. I'm sure there's other questions that we haven't gotten to.
Cool. Well, it's fun. It's great to see other gleaners out there. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank y'all.